Hello, my name is Kathryn Greene, and today I will be discussing my project that will actually compose the first chapter of my dissertation in my PhD program at University of Kentucky. So today I will discuss the survival and movement of stream salamanders in an altered landscape. So first, before I dive into that, I'm going to briefly discuss the role of dispersal in metapopulations. Metapopulations are a group of local populations that are connected by the movement of individuals, either entering or leaving a population. Now, I'm not going to discuss the different types of metapopulations, but as you can see by the graph, metapopulation structure is mostly determined by the size of the patches that the populations occupy and the degree of connectivity and isolation between the populations. Now, understanding metapopulations is very important for my project. It's pretty much the overall goal of my project, is to assess how metapopulation connectivity may be disrupted in an altered landscape. And because disturbance events are known to increase the isolation between populations, and as you can see with the non-equilibrium metapopulation structure, if there's high isolation and no movement between the populations, they are more susceptible to local extinction. So a known disturbance event that occurs in the Appalachian ecosystem is mountaintop removal mining. So this is what I'm going to be focused on for my project. So mountaintop removal mining, just as a reminder, it is a type of surface mining that involves the excavation of the top of mountains in order to expose shallow coal seams. Now, all this rock, known as overburden, is then deposited in nearby valleys, forming valley fills. Now, this process also involves the removal of the surrounding temperate deciduous forest. Now, although the mining is once it's concluded, they are supposed to reclaim and restore the land that they were mined on. Typically, the temperate deciduous forest does not come back immediately. Instead, a grassland or shrubland type habitat, as shown on the picture there, typically takes hold instead of the typical temperate deciduous forest. Now, in addition, those valley fills are often also have a physical impact in the headwater streams that are typically found in those valleys. So they physically cover and bury those headwater streams, and over time chemically alter the streams, as over time weathering on the rock leaches the chemicals into the stream. Now, a dominant organism that is present in these headwater ecosystems are stream salamanders, also known as plethodonid salamanders, the lungless salamander. Now, these guys play a vital role in this ecosystem since they serve as a main predator of the macroinvertebrates that occupy the streams and the surrounding riparian habitat, and they serve as prey for pretty much anything ranging from reptiles, mammals, birds, and other amphibians. Now, these guys are also fascinating because they have a complex life cycle that requires multiple habitats in order to complete. So for instance, most stream salamanders have a fully aquatic larval stage where they remain confined to the stream. And then once they undergo metamorphosis, they are able to live on land, able to move around and breathe air, and pretty much rely on an intact riparian habitat until they decide to disperse far distances, up to 500 meters or so, into the surrounding woodland habitat. And then they decide whether to move to find a new population or decide to settle in their original population as adults and establish their home range. Now, previous research has already established that salamander populations in the streams impacted by mountaintop removal mining have reduced abundance, occupancy, persistence, and colonization. Now, the reduction in persistence and colonization is particularly notable and indicative that their movement between populations may be disrupted, that the metapopulation connectivity may be altered or fragmented, since persistence and colonization are the two key components that drive metapopulations. So therefore, for my project, I will be evaluating the survival and calculate the dispersal rates of these 5 common salamander species. So including the two-line salamander, seal salamander, dusky salamander, spring salamander, and red salamander. And I will compare the survival and dispersal rates between each site type. So between a reclaimed mining area and compare it with a reference undisturbed forest stream sites. And I predict that, as shown with previous research, that survival will be lower for the stream salamanders at the mine sites versus the reference sites, and that dispersal will also be lower at the mine sites. Specifically, the overland and upstream survival may be impacted as a result of the physical alterations caused by the mining on the terrestrial and aquatic habitat. So, in order to calculate the dispersal rates, I will have to conduct a capture, mark, recapture at 8 stream reaches. So half of them are in this reclaimed surface mine where mining operations occurred in the 1980s. And so it is located in the orange part between Predhead and Knott County in eastern Kentucky. And directly northwest of the reclaimed surface mine is an undisturbed high-quality forest known as Robinson Forest, owned by University of Kentucky. So I have half my sites there too. Now at each site, there are stream sections, headwater streams, that are paired with another stream that are about 300 to 500 meters away from each other. And at each stream, I have a 50-meter transect along the stream up to the valley fill in the mine sites, and starting at the node where the branches connect at the reference sites. So this sampling setup allows me to look at different forms of dispersal and movement for stream salamanders. So I can look at within stream movement and overland movement between the paired streams. And as you can see, my paired streams are also kind of close to my other streams in the reference and mine landscape. So potentially look at movement between the different stream sites. So this has already been a process. I sampled during the summertime last year, and starting in April, I will continue sampling every month to hopefully April 2022, because the model I plan to use is very data hungry, so it requires a lot of sampling periods and a lot of recaptures. So I actively search the 50-meter transects and capture every individual of those 5 species of each age class, so including the larvae, juvenile, and adult stage. And after measuring the salamanders, I would give each one a unique tag with visible implant elastomer, so VIE. So if you look at the lower left picture, you will see that salamander has these fluorescent tags at the base of each leg. So therefore, you can see there's a yellow, yellow, orange, blue tag. So that is how I identify salamanders, and if I recapture them, I'm able to re-identify them and see where they have moved over that span of time. So here is the raw data so far of all the salamanders I've caught. So far, I've caught close to 2,000 salamanders, most of which were dusky salamanders, about 1,200 duskies, with about close to 300 recaps, which is pretty good. And the second most caught salamander was the seal salamander, and I caught quite a few 2-lines, springs, and red salamanders, with very little recaptures, unfortunately. Now, I've already noticed some interesting movement, specifically with the dusky salamander within the stream. So you'll notice that with the orange and brown bars, most of the movement occurred within about 4 meters up and downstream. But based on previous research, this is most likely movement of home range surveys. So it's not significant dispersal movement that signifies leaving their home range. So instead, any movement that is greater than 4 meters I will note as significant movement, and will be focusing on for my my multi-state model that I'll be conducting later. So pretty much all of this movement. And as you can see, there are some individuals that displayed very far distances. Like there is even one individual that moved upstream 48 meters. Now just to show you what this looks like in person, here are some salamander movement paths that I have observed. So for instance, this little dusky larvae was caught at the 40-meter mark at one of my sites, Field Branch C, and his code was EOBOY. And the following year, I caught him as a juvenile in the adjacent stream, so he actually moved overland. And another interesting story, I also found this dusky larvae at one of my other sites, Little Millseed. His code was P_BO, and the following year, it was so surprising, I did actually find him. He traveled all the way to my other sites, which are about 500 to 800 meters away, and I caught him as a juvenile. So instead of telling the story of every single recapture, instead I will construct a multi-state model in MARC that allow me to calculate the transition probability, or also known as the dispersal rate. Because the transition probability is the probability that an individual in a certain state at a certain time will be found in a different state at the next time occasion, depending on whether they survive to that next occasion and whether they are present. So pretty much how I will calculate state is based on the type of movement they display, so whether they don't move, they move upstream, downstream, move to the paired stream, or move to a different stream, and also what age class they were found in. So for instance, if I want to calculate the probability of a salamander displaying the type of movement that that last salamander displayed, that moved to a different stream, then pretty much it will look at the transition probability between the state A to state L. But of course, that will require a lot more data. I am currently constructing that model in MARC, and I will include all the data from the last summer and this up to present day. And I will be able to evaluate the differences in the dispersal rates between the mined and reference sites, and hopefully give me an idea of the demographic connectivity between the populations in the mine landscape and the reference landscape, and see whether it is fragmented or altered in any way. So I would like to thank all the amazing people and organizations that helped me so far with this project. It required a lot of work and a lot of field work especially. I would love to thank the Kentucky Society of Natural History for providing the funds that allowed me to drive over to my field sites, and all the other organizations that provide some funds, and of course my advisors and all the people listed below that helped me capture and mark all the stream salamanders. Thank you, and I hope you appreciated it.